All right, so we are back here with, I think, what is it, Tom? Our third or fourth? What are we on?
Yeah, I
right
mean,
now?
I think we're on like maybe number 4, but I don't even think it matters because we're just going to start releasing content, Matt. So like we're back because we've had this this hiatus of time where we haven't been as consistent as what we said we were going to do.
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little bit. So, me, Tom, and two of our other business partners went on a men's retreat, kind of an opportunity to team build a little bit, get a little bro time in, kind of hang out. And we had a pretty crazy weekend. 3 out of the 4 of us ended up getting a variation of Rona. I got hit pretty hard. Then our Danny, our partner, got hit hard, and then Rich was not quite as beat up by it, but it kind of put us off our game a little bit. I think we took a 2-week hiatus here on recording just to kind of catch our breath.
Yeah, I mean, look, it comes down. We're all in the same room, and we're spending this weekend together. We say crazy weekend. Wasn't crazy that we were doing the things that we would normally, would have done in the past while we were in the core. It was literally a retreat to unplug and get away from cell phones. But the 3 of you, because you don't leave your homes that often, you guys all ended up with the Rona variant going around, and lucky little Mac over here. Because I sleep religiously with my sleep apnea machine, made it out unscathed. But I know it's been a heck of a time for everybody to recover and get back on track.
Yeah, we over here am 47-year-old with a compromised immune system. Apparently now I'm getting to that age. But I know it hit me pretty hard. But I should be good for the next 4 months, so we shouldn't have any interruptions. But I want to say welcome everybody back. I appreciate you guys hanging in there, and I'm looking forward to pushing out a good episode here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just happy to see you again this way because we go too long and we're not doing this. And then I start to feel creatively just
drained. Yeah.
Dead, not even drained, just dead. Like it just, I need to have these conversations with you, Matt. Otherwise I just start to feel like a buffoon.
Well, I really enjoy these, and I'm hoping, I'm glad you do too. And I'm hoping we get something out of this one here, but let's talk about what are we going to cover here? What's the plan today?
Well, I mean, I think we got to go a little bit more current events, and the Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, just nonstop on things that are taking place within DoD. Specifically, the Signal chat scandal of 2025. And so I'm sure people have heard some sort of like variation of what's going on out there, and depending on who you're listening to, there are slants that are out there. And so no joke, man, I think that it's time to just show everybody out there what took place on Signal, and just have a conversation about what's actually going on there, and why it does or does not matter. And then talk about things that probably really do matter and why they're not being talked about. So I think that's kind of the start point, if that's cool with you.
No, I think that's a great plan here. I think I have everything pulled up here. So the plan, I think, today is to go over the I guess what it's called is the Signal chat. Everybody knows the Signal chat, but it's called the Houthi small group is what the name of the group was through Signal that got a lot of controversy and was talked about pretty religiously in the news. And I think me and Tom, being both senior people in the military and both retired, can probably give some pretty good analysis of this, and maybe talk a little bit about the personality dynamics that I think exist in these chats. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the first slide up here, and we'll get into it. Sound good?
It sounds great, but I got to lead with this, Matt. Like, what's hilarious to me about this Signal chat is that this is like no different than any type of group thread that we're on professionally, or that we were on professionally in like recruiting type dynamics or recruiting situations. That's what's funny to me, is that these senior leaders of ours are no different than us, no different than any other human beings that conduct business. It's just, let's break into it, because it's straight comedy.
Yeah, let's do it. So, what I found interesting is I went through these. I had seen a couple of screenshots of this when it first hit the news, and I was thinking like it was national security stuff, and I really hadn't looked at everything. But when we talked to schedule this episode, right before this, I went through these and I read them, and it really struck me as kind of the same way. Like it seems kind of a bit overblown. But I also think what I find interesting about this is sort of like you're saying, like this professional, like the intermingling of these characters who are running our country and how they communicate and who's kind of walking with the authority and who's kind of trying to, curl up to who. I find that very interesting. So, so I guess this is the first slide here, and we'll break into this right now. And I didn't look up Mike Walt, but he must be a DoD guy. So they're basically establishing this, I think, as a result of the president of the United States kind of, making a threat. Like, hey, look, you guys keep messing with our shipping lanes, we are going to get you. And I think that spurred an internal working group that ended up getting put together by this Michael Waltz guy, who I think this dude is actually the guy that was accused of adding the reporter to the group, and the guy that actually kind of wrote the story about it. So whether this guy did it on purpose, did it on accident, who knows, or whether someone slipped him in as a kind of like a joke or something like that, who knows why that is. Signal's kind of easy to add and remove people, so it's very possible it could have got snuck in there by somebody who's trying to blow this whole thing up. But you can see right here, for people who don't really understand, military lingo, establishing a principals group. Principals are like, as a term used to just kind of describe a group of decision makers, people who are going to be consulted in order to make a decision on something that's going to happen in the future. Stakeholders, I guess, is another term for it.
Yeah, he's with the NSA, Matt. That's who he's with.
Okay, Michael Waltz is with the NSA, so he must be a director of some, maybe CIA director. Is that what he is?
I think he's the NSA. I think he's the NSA. We're just going to put it up in here, because might as well just make sure, because I don't even really know. Yeah, NSA Mike Waltz. Let's see.
He's a former congressman, I believe.
Yeah, American politician, businessman, author, former Army Special Forces, assumed office. He's the incumbent. He's the United States National Security Advisor, and assumed office on the 20th of January, 2025. And that's it.
Oh, he's the current national. So okay, there it is. So national security advisor. That's a pretty senior cabinet or office position with the president. So okay, got it. Thanks, Tom.
And he was at the U.S. House of Representatives, Florida's 6th district, from January of 19 until January 25.
Got it. Yeah. So probably, with the president living in Florida, they probably developed a pretty close relationship, and notice a lot of these folks that are serving in his administration are people he's probably met in between terms. But let's go ahead and move on over here. And I actually Googled some of these cats, and I find this kind of interesting. So the people who are being talked about in this signal chat, the people, the vice president, secretary of defense, they're not even putting this together. It's actually all the deputies. So you're seeing, Mike Needham, Andy Baker is an assistant to the vice president, Joe Kent for the director of national intelligence, Dan Katz for Treasury, which I find interesting. Treasury gets added to this. And then Dan Caldwell for the DOD. And Dan Caldwell, I think, is a policy guy that works directly for the Secretary of Defense. So these are probably, quote unquote, like the assistants that are putting together this working group for the Department of Defense and the president's team. So let's will we slide this thing or what?
Yeah, let's do that. We've got this getting the characters, but now I'm just kind of curious of who Caldwell is and what his background is. So I'm gonna look that up here.
NSC is National Security Council. So whether he's an assistant working with the National Security Council, or he's a member of the National Security Council, I don't really know. And usually that has been a high. The National Security Council used to be the preeminent council in our government, and it's sort of gotten kind of there's less prominence in the decision making of our government over the years, because I think that Joint Chiefs and the president have taken a front seat more, and then the National Security Council used to be very high profile, powerful people.
Yeah. So Caldwell was a Marine too, with 2-1.
Yeah. So, and if you look these guys up, I mean, all these guys, when I was Googling around to see who they were, they're not like, I think we're older than all of them. I mean, these guys are 30s, 40s. They're not super old guys. So very young, relatively for the level they're serving at, probably, trying to make their way into politics. Pretty crazy.
See, I'm not that old yet, man. I'm not even 41. So come on, like this is my age. They're just doing it way better than I've ever done.
That tells you how I look at myself in the mirror, because when I looked at these guys as pictures, I was like definitely older than these guys. So I definitely think these cats are younger than me, but that doesn't mean anything these days. There's some really smart young people out there that are capable at this level. So so it looks like Michael Waltz, he put this together. He got all the invitations out there in the Signal chat, brought everybody into the room, and that's probably why he's getting blamed for this reporter sneaking in, because he's the coordinator of this chat. And it says right here, team, you should have a statement of conclusions with tasking per the president's guidance this morning in your high side inboxes. State and DoD, we developed suggested notification lists for regional allies and partners. Joint staff is sending, then that's interesting. The joint staff's involved here. They're not in the room, but it's on here. Is sending this AM a more specific sequence of events in the coming days, and we will work with the DoD to ensure. I don't know what COS, Chief of Staff, Office of the Vice President, and POTUS are being briefed. So those are just probably the main offices involved in the decision making. But it is interesting that no active duty members are in here. No, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is in here. None of the, this is all off a carrier. So I would assume the Navy's going to have a huge role, outsized role in this mission here, but they're not in the room right now. So because it's decision making, they're just executors. These people are the deciders, I suppose.
Yeah, and then just for our audience that's out there that doesn't have military affiliation, when you hear high side inboxes, you're talking about secure internet. So it's known as a SIPRnet line. I don't know if there's one that goes higher than that, but it is inboxes that allow classified information to be shared, unless I'm completely off on that, Matt. And I would not be surprised if I'm completely off on that.
No, that's where most of this stuff gets pushed, is through these. But one of the problems with a lot of government secure internet is that it's asynchronous. So you're not chatting real time. It's kind of like sending an email and waiting for a response. Whereas stuff like Signal is just like, bing, 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 bing. It's very quick, very real time, and it's a lot better way of communicating. But that functionality doesn't necessarily exist organically in the military. At least I didn't experience it. I didn't deal with a lot of classified stuff when I was in, but I do know that it's very hard to get messaging going on official government, systems. So
as it should be,
yeah.
As it should be. That's usually used to brief, to inform, to make sure that everybody sees the bigger picture. But when decisions need to be made and coordinated in real time, you need some sort of something to make sure that the information flow or that information chain stays.
Heck yeah, brother. So, all right. Now this is probably, in my opinion, the most kind of telling slide of the the telling message of all the messages. And it kind of talks to JD Vance and his kind of opinion on this whole thing, right? He's kind of a no vote out the gate. And he says, team, I am out for a day. So this is probably his assistant writing this. This isn't actually him, but it's coming up as JD Vance. Team, I'm out for the day, an economic event over in Michigan. I think I watched that video too when he was in Michigan. But I think we are making a mistake. 3% of the U.S. trade runs through the Suez. So he's making the case that this is not a U.S. issue. So he's saying this isn't something we really use. Why are we investing resources in it? 40% of European trade does. There is a real risk the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. And I think that relates more closely to what the POTUS's promises were when he was campaigning of no new conflicts, no new wars. And this kind of is contradictory in that sense. The strongest reason to do this is, as POTUS said, to send a message. But I am not sure the president is aware of how inconsistent this is with his message on how Europe right now. There is a future risk that we see as a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. Again, economic considerations. One of the biggest problems in our country right now are costs of everything, and fossil fuels is a driver of that. I am willing to support the consensus of this team. So he puts himself out there as a no vote, but then he says, if you guys all want to do this really bad, I'm game. I'm down. I'm down to play. I'm down to clown here. I am willing to support, which is probably how they talk. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm being honest, Vince was a Marine, so he's got to have that, sailor type language. I am willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself, but there is a strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging work on this matters, seeing where the economy is, and et cetera. So his concerns are really, what is the net reward or net payoff for us here? It seems to me like he doesn't think there's a big economic footprint for America in the Middle East or in the Suez Canal. And, continuing to hit these guys isn't really going to have a payoff. What do you think, Tom?
I think that the next message, I think it continues, breaks this down even better. So can we flip to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is really where they start breaking down the message. And so he's asking in that, or what I take away from that last message is he's asking whether or not this is something that has to happen now. And kind of it's just saying, hey, look, maybe we need to get the messaging right, meaning there's an education on who the Houthis are and why this matters. And right now, with the current state of where the country is, there's other things that we might want to be focused on that take a priority. And so he's bringing this up to kind of get the group's take on it. And so when we break in here, like Joey Kent saying, there's nothing time sensitive driving this timeline, have the same exact options in a month. The Israelis will take strikes and therefore ask us to replenish whatever they have against the Houthis, but that's a minor factor. I'll send you the N-class data we pulled on BAM shipping. John Ratcliffe from the CIA perspective, we are mobilizing assets to support now, but a delay would not negatively impact us. An additional time would be used to identify better starting points for coverage on Houthi leadership. So, this is something that they're saying we don't have to do right now. The opportunity is going to exist in a month. And for me, this is just kind of where it's almost comedic because we're picking on I don't want to say picking on, we're taking out a soft target that we could take out at any point. Yet there had to have been a reason that we did it on the time frame that we did it. And I think that as we get further in the messages, we're going to kind of break out what and maybe have some assumptions as to the why.
What I think is kind of wild here is that if your intelligence is good, there's windows of opportunity to put together these strike packages and actually hit the targets you're looking for. That tells me that their intel is either they don't really have a great target, or their intel is so damn good that they know where these guys are every single day, and it doesn't matter when we hit because we know where they're going to be. And I think they talk about this a little bit more later in the chat too, where they're talking about the guy's girlfriend they hit, which is crazy. But let's keep moving here. And this is my second favorite one. This is Pete Hegseth, and he's talking to the VP. He's appealing to the vice president, which I think it tells me in this message before I start reading it is that he's concerned about that perception, right? He's like, okay, I think this is a good idea. VP is not. So let me try to make my case directly to the VP in this thread, which I think is pretty cool. And he goes on here and says, I understand your concerns and I fully support you raising with POTUS important considerations. I think that's crazy because he's saying, like, I understand your concerns, but if you want to complain, you go do it. I'm not going to be a part of that because you got to have that relationship with the big boss, but most of which are tough to know how they play out: economy, Ukraine, peace, Gaza, all that jazz. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are. Well, I mean, most people don't know, which is why we would need to stay focused on one, Biden failed, and two, Iran funded. So those are probably the Republican talking points on why the Houthis are bad, right? So they have this probably in the press junket, these lines. Hey, these are two reasons why we need to smash these dudes. Waiting for a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus. Two immediate risks on waiting. So he's advocating in this that we should move faster, vice slower, which is interesting. This leaks, and we could look indecisive. So he's concerned about this getting out, and maybe there's some of the soft targets or some of the intelligence dries up on this. Or two is really text action first, which I think is crazy because if they're saying this, then some of this intel is probably sourced from Israel, which would make sense because they have the most to lose or to gain from these Houthis being put down. And we don't want to get let's see, we don't want to start this on our own terms. We can manage both, which is wild here.
Or the Gaza ceasefire falls apart.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah,
So,
yep.
like my takeaway on this is that they're looking for, political points, right? Like, why do we have to attack? We're going to show that we have strength. We're going to show that on the previous administration, they didn't take action. We're not going to do that. We're not indecisive is kind of like the case that I think he's trying to prove here. And more so, like, this is kind of what's, I'd say, just a little bit scary, is that we're making decisions for, popularity points, in essence here, right? Like, not saying that they didn't need to be put down, but this is all about the optics and how people are going to feel once everything is said and done. And for them to be, concerned that the Gaza peace deal falls apart, or that Israel is going to get credit for putting these folks down. It's about maintaining the perception of our dominance, in the region, and us being this national security police force that's going to put down bad in the world and not let it kind of fester.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's. I'll let you keep going there, Matt, because I'm not that good at reading.
So the vice president goes on to say, he's kind of waffling a little, not waffling, but he's kind of leaving it up to the group. He's saying, if we had a final go or no go vote, I believe we should. So he's saying, I know I'm not making a decision here, but I believe we should do this. This is not about the Houthis, and this is, I think, important too, because if you're paying attention to some of the things the president's saying, his position on the Houthis was he wanted to dismantle their capabilities. I think when I watched the press conference on this, the purpose was Biden was using the strikes during his administration as sort of like a deterrence, or to kind of prevent them from getting bad ideas. We're gonna go tit for tat with you. And in this message, Secretary Hegseth does say, like, restoring freedom of navigation, a core interest of ours, which it is. I mean, one of the biggest responsibilities the U.S. Navy has is to ensure free trade with safe waters, and I think that is a premier function of the U.S. Navy, which is protecting the open seas from pirates and from this sort of like riffraff. But he says he wants to reestablish deterrence, which Biden cratered. I don't know. I think Biden did the same thing. I think he did not to kind of agree with Biden, but I think he did a couple airstrikes and called it a day, and then it didn't really work. And these guys are more committed to this. The Houthis have been a problem for a very long time. And I think, I don't think the purpose of this mission, at least described as, my phone's ringing, it described as what the president's intent was, hey, we're gonna decapitate, we're gonna disable, we're gonna remove their capability, and we're gonna keep going until they can no longer hit ships. I think that's what he said. And this is more of like, hey, we just want to prevent them from you know what I mean? We want to prevent them from getting bad ideas and doing what they're doing. So what do you think?
I mean, I think that's dead on. And realistically, I think it's about showing that there is strength, that we are not going to just sit here and make empty threats.
Yeah.
But we're not fighting an equal partner, or an equal enemy adversary. The Houthis have done some damage. They have caused chaos. They have, made life bad, but this is not China. This is not Russia. And so the best way I can describe it is it's kind of like, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, picking on a 4-year-old is kind of what it feels like here. Yet we are making mountains out of molehills with these messages leaking out.
And that's like our MO, man. Like we fight down. We've been fighting down for a very long time, and this is another example of that. And I think there's also this perception of our capability that other peer aggressors like China and Russia are going to get out of this. Like, we are capable of hitting priority targets hundreds of miles away from our ships. Hint, hint, nod, nod. This could be you, dummy, if you don't, yield to our national security interests. So let's move this thing a little bit here. And I think this is still Pete Hegseth here, and he says, but we can easily pause, and if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC. I welcome other thoughts. So he is kind of, nobody's making a hard case. Like, we absolutely have to do this. Is like down the middle in terms of our national security interests. We absolutely have to strike these guys. If we don't, we're going to get hurt. They're all kind of waffling a little bit, and I don't know, like, that seems kind of strange. And it could be because the president has made a point and they're trying to rationalize in a side chat, how we're going to approach this. And I guess it's kind of fair. And then we got Mike Waltz, who's coming back with some more information, who I think Mike Waltz might be the advocate here, right? The trade figures we have. Well, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, yep.
Yeah. And he's talking about trade figures, and he's contradicting what the Treasury had said earlier, which is trade figures we have are 15% of global and 30% of container is what's going through the Suez Canal. It's difficult to break down the U.S. specifically, because much of the container either going through the Red Sea or still around the Cape of Hope. So if you're going to bypass the Suez Canal, you have to go around Africa. Is how it works. So Suez Canal is sort of like a shortcut to get your goods to a certain location. That's why it's such an important trade route here. For people who don't really understand why this is a big deal, but the argument I think the vice president was making earlier is the U.S. does not have a lot of its trade, which speaks to the America first sort of like administration's priority, which is, hey, if it doesn't directly affect us, why are we effing with it? We got partners in the region who can take care of their own problems. We shouldn't be expected to go and run these operations if they should have the capability internally to take care of these clowns that are attacking ships. But let me read this rest of this message here and we can talk a little more. Where I live, because much of the container either going through the Red Sea or around the Cape of Hope are components going to Europe that turns into manufacturing goods for transatlantic trade to the United States. So he's trying to make this connection that, maybe not directly we're getting a lot of goods from this trade route, but it's in more of an indirect situation where some of our components to some of our larger consumer goods may be affected by this. Whether we pull the plug or not, today European navies do not have the capabilities to defend against this type of sophisticated anti-ship cruise missiles and drones the Houthis are using now. So whether it's now or several weeks from now, it will be the United States that reopens the shipping lanes. Per the president's request, we are working with the DoD and state to determine how to compile the costs associated and levy them on the Europeans. So that's crazy too, man. That's like, oh, well, they can't do it. We're just going to call it what it is. They don't have the capabilities internal to their navies anymore to do these kind of work, which I think that the British do. The British have a carrier, and I think they have cruise missile capabilities. But I could be wrong. Maybe that's depreciated over the years. And then they're basically saying it's no matter what happens, it's going to fall on us to do it because no one else has the capability. And then we're going to send a bill to Europe. Once we're going to send cruise missiles, then we're going to make the Europeans write a check for the cruise missiles, which is crazy.
Well, and you want to know the crazy thing I take out of that is like when you think of the Houthis, like prior to this, when I think of the Houthis, I'm thinking about like dudes running around, in just whatever garb they have, and they're, hopping on some little boat over there and attacking by, pulling a move like they did with that one movie Tom Hanks was in, like hijacking ships and creating havoc by just these arbitrary, weird insurgent type tactics. But when you sit here and you talk about sophisticated anti-ship cruise missiles and drones, that never crossed my mind as being a tactic that they're using, which is just kind of showing how this enemy is evolving, very similar to how they did during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. The insurgents, leveraging technology to create hell and ruckus. I remember when we invaded Iraq, and that was kind of like just a march into the country with, not saying that there weren't nasty battles, but it wasn't near, what I think people thought it was going to be going into it. But as we stayed there as kind of like an occupational force, and, the enemy started, seeing an opportunity to inflict pain on, DOD as a whole, their tactics evolved and got more complex. And what went from, tank mines buried in the ground turned into very sophisticated systems. And that's what we're seeing right now. And the thing that just boils my blood, Matt, is we're getting upset over signal chat being, out there. What about this technology and this enemy leveraging this technology and wanting to inflict, either economic or actual physical pain on our interests? Why are we not jumping up and down over that? That's the bigger problem here in this situation, outside of some leaked chats, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we don't ever, break this thing down or make the public aware, because it's a political talking point for one side or the other. And that's really where the problem lies, is that we're sitting here arguing points over emotion and how people feel, instead of just the cold hard facts and the things that should open people's eyes and cause them to have a little bit of pause and consideration for the situation as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, I think as our country has fewer and fewer people, that veterans in general who are familiar with what this stuff is, it matters less and less politically to talk about it. And I think a lot of what these political actors do is they make the assessment up front, like, how is this going to help me or hurt me politically? And they make the assessment that there's no purpose in really keeping people informed about defense. And that is a massive problem, because people don't care. And if people don't care and nobody feels the urge or the need to teach or talk, then there's just going to be this snowball that's rolling down a hill and gaining speed and mass. And then at some point, these people who don't care are just going to wake up with a snowman in their face. You know what I mean? Like it really is difficult to understand. And a lot of their cruise missile technology is coming from Iran. They're Iranian backed. So Iran certainly is giving them some of the military grade technology. But to your point, Tom, what they're not really touching on is the consumer grade stuff that everybody has access to, that you can now leverage for hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars, to kill, maim, wound, destroy, people and things. And that's going to be the bigger problem long term, because if every time a Houthi, fill in the blank, a Taliban, a Houthi, an ISIS fighter flies a $500 commercial or consumer grade drone into a tank, we use $1 million cruise missile to kill them. But how long is that equation, that math, going to work until we run out of money or we run out of capability? And this is really where I think we're in danger if we don't really start addressing these problems, which is we got to flow a 5,000 manned aircraft carrier across the world, equipped with multi-million-dollar aircraft and multi-million-dollar missiles, to kill a Houthi who's riding in a technical. You know what a technical is? One of those trucks with a machine gun mounted in the back. And that cost them $10,000 to put together, and we're spending millions upon millions of dollars to take out a freaking technical. I mean, the math doesn't add up. We can't maintain that level of ratio of money. It's really bad. It's really kind of like a Moneyball situation where we're just throwing. They're throwing pennies and we're throwing big checks. It's crazy. Yeah,
it's Giambi and the Oakland A's again.
Yeah, buddy, it totally is. And I don't. That's the kind of the thing that people aren't really, I think, picking up on with these messages, is like, man, we're really just, these people aren't spending any money and they're just giving us a hard time, and we're over here, I mean, what does it cost to move an aircraft carrier? You know what I mean? Like, I can't even imagine the food, the fuel, the pay. I mean, it's just unbelievable, massive. It's like moving a city to kill a bunch of people living in tents or living like, cavemen, essentially, with a couple of, missiles, or, I'm sure they're not, living like cavemen, but it's close, man. I mean, they're closer to a human being 500 years ago than they are to the modern, Western human being. And they don't really care. The way they view loss is entirely different than us. It's a strange world, and we're living in it. So let's see here. So let's recap a bit, since we went on a little bit of a tangent here. We just got done with Mr. Michael Waltz making the case on why we should strike, after Pete Hegseth sort of did the same thing. Now we're still on Michael Waltz here, And he's making a deeper case here. Is, as we stated in the first PC, we have a fundamental decision for allowing the sea lanes to remain closed or to reopen them now or later. We are the only ones with that capability, unfortunately. So he's saying that again. From a messaging standpoint, we are absolutely add this to the horribles on why Europeans must invest in their defense. So he's basically just saying, look, this is gonna be something we have to do. There's no way around it because we're the only ones that can do it, and this is a problem because the Europeans don't spend money on defense, and which is a massive, it's a huge talking point to just discussing the situation with NATO and how what our role is going to be with defending Europe in the future. Which I tend to agree. I think we've really subsidized NATO for a very long time, and if you look at Europe as a bloc, they are just as wealthy as we are. Europe is a very wealthy, collectively is a very wealthy bloc, and they should collectively, invest in defense and provide capability where we don't have to be the world's policeman anymore if we don't want to be. And then you got JD Vance, and he kind of just says, like he's acquiescing to the kind of tenor of the discussion, which is, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing out Europe. I hate bailing out Europe again. So he's just echoing the kind of like the administration's position on European defense, and he's kind of saying, well, the group's saying yes, let's roll. And then JV, I'm not sure who JV is. We should probably, we'll get back to that later here. And then JV says, let's make sure our messaging is tight here. This is probably State Department. And if there's things we can do up front to minimize risk, the Saudi oil facilities, we should do it. So the Houthis are, approximately close to Saudi Arabia. They are approximately close to Israel. They're sort of in that little triangle there where there's a lot of national defense interests, a lot of oil production, Israel, Gaza, just a lot of high, things that have been in our world for a very long time as people who have deployed to the Middle East and have served our country in these places. This is just kind of the center of our attention for the last, since the first Gulf War, effectively. It's all we've done is be playing with the Middle East. Anything on this, Tom? What do you think?
No, I find it comedic. JD Vance is sitting there saying, just hate bailing out Europe again, because they want change. They want them to swing in the corner of, pulling their fair share. And I can't say that I can argue with that because, as an American taxpayer, like you feel it every day and you feel it in every aspect of your life. And then going on there, whoever JV is, it's probably State Department.
State Department or Treasury. I think they're making a point as kind of State Department or Treasury, depending on,
Yep.
Yeah.
And protecting Saudi oil, so that Americans back here don't feel that with some sort of attack, some sort of retaliation that's there. So they're looking at this. They're looking at all sides of the situation before they just make a rash decision. And I think that again, the media out there is again obsessing over this signal chat leaking. But if you really were to take the time, there is some intellectual conversation going on back and forth as to why we should or shouldn't do. There are things that are being weighed and discussed by trusted advisors, so that they can go back to the boss and say, hey, here's what we think. This is how we've examined it. And obviously we know that this thing went through. But yeah, let's keep trucking along with these messages here because they get even better.
And so here we have, Pete Hegseth coming back at the VP. I fully share your loathing for European freeloading. It's pathetic. I mean, that is pretty. I mean, if we're talking about the damage this caused, right? I mean, I don't think national security wise, it hurts us in a sense of letting the Houthis know our way we communicate. I think what it does do is tell our European allies, like, hey, look, we really don't respect the stuff that you're doing over there. And to your point, Tom, like, there's a lot of people who will brag about, sort of like the social programs that exist in Europe. And those programs are really paid for through the lack of defense spending, right? A lot of things that we've had to finance over the last 30 or 40 or 50 years in the in the a prospect of global defense, the Europeans have taken that wealth that they would have spent on defense, and they've said, well, we're going to provide healthcare. We're going to invest that directly into our citizenry. And I think our this America first philosophy that's sort of percolating up in America is a kind of like a direct response to this, like, hey, what about us? We're over here. We have homeless. We have people struggling. We have healthcare issues. We don't want to spend all our money defending you guys. But I think if Pete Hegseth had to take that one back, I bet he would. I bet he would say, I wouldn't write that if I knew the Europeans were going to read it. Although I would say that Europeans are probably reading every damn thing that's in these guys' phones. I would imagine they have the capability of gathering intel. So maybe I'm wrong here. But he goes on to say, go ahead, Tom.
No, I just, I've got a rule. I don't ever send a text message or send an email that I wouldn't be 100% okay with being released to anybody. I think you might have taught me that before.
Yeah, buddy. I had a good friend of mine who was an attorney. He told me never take something that could be a phone call and make it into an email or a message. Just call me if you got something that's weird. And I think that's good.
This is the perfect opportunity to throw just a recruiting tagline out there.
Yeah.
Admit nothing, deny everything, make counter accusations. When you're on a Signal chat or an email or just a regular text message, you don't have the ability to do that. So for the recruiter types that watch this, you just remember that. Remember, you don't have the ability to walk things back once it's electronically out there in the world.
Yeah, you write it down, man. It's out there, and unfortunately, in this case, it actually was. I read something, Tom, that under the Biden administration, they had approved Signal as an appropriate means of communication for government, general government communication. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying because I read that. It could be bullshit. It could be someone, just making things up. Who knows these days with media the way it is? You never know what's true and what's not. But it makes sense. That seems kind of very, to hop into a Signal chat like this. It seems to me like there has to be some sort of consent going on here to allow this, because it's crazy that this would be the place to go. But it says here, but Mike is correct. We are the only ones on the planet on Earth. So making this case again about we're the only ones capable. Nobody even comes close. Question is timing. I feel like now is a good time, good a time as any, given POTUS's directive to reopen shipping lanes. I think we should go, but POTUS still retains 24-hour decision space, which I love that, because that speaks to okay, we're gonna tee up the red button, but we're only one that can push that thing is going to be the man to give the go. So even though these guys have kind of made their choices, they kind of taken their side and they've decided, ultimately it falls on President Trump to make that decision, which is when you're talking about lethality, it's pretty much how it works. If you're planning to kill people, that's the president. It has to go to the president. It has to rise to his level. And they're talking about Europe again. So, and he's being a little more forceful here. I feel like now is a good time as any, given POTUS's directive. So he's really leveraging, the president's statements, public statements, saying, hey, look, this is something that the president wants done, and we should probably move on it if we want to keep him happy. So, yeah, there we go. So we got SM. I don't know who SM is, but we'll read his statement here. He's as I've heard it, the president was clear. Green light. We will soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we expect in return. So they're already talking about quid pro quos about, hey, you're going to pay us back for this these attacks. We also need to figure out how to enforce such a requirement, e.g., Egypt. If Europe doesn't remunerate, then what? If the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return. And then Pete Hegseth agrees, which is crazy to see, because I don't think these sort of conversations ever happened before where we're expecting to be paid back for military action. We've always just kind of done it, and then it's kind of been goodwill. I have to imagine that's how it's always been. We had Bush, Obama, Trump won, and then Biden. I don't think that I've ever seen any kind of quid pro quo situation going on where there's, hey, you're going to pay, you're going to write a cruise missile check for this. You know what I'm saying? Count them out, doing the multiplier. But
you're paying for these MREs and the UGRs on ship.
Yeah.
You know, you're paying for the fuel. And look, not saying it has to be that way, but you look, you feel, we all feel what actually is happening in this country. And you got, regardless of how you politically feel, no one likes feeling poor. No one likes feeling like their livelihoods are in jeopardy. And we've got all these causes folks want to get behind to make life better. Well, it all starts with coin in pocket. But prior to the coin in pocket, you know, it's about the peace and security that exists throughout the world, so that we can live the way that we live and feel the way that we do.
Yeah.
Just for me, like, look, tax them. You want to be protected by Big Brother, then you gotta pay the Big Brother tax. You know, if that means that you can't give, you know, free healthcare to every Tom, Dick, and Harry out in the European Union, then so be it. Because the peace and security that allows people to kind of live in a blanket of freedom, or under a blanket of freedom, that's worth the investment, in my opinion.
Agree. Yeah, I think I don't think we're interested in being the World Cup anymore. I think we got enough problems nationally where our resources should go to internal issues, and I think that's the reflection of our country that's affecting the political shift that's happened. And a lot of this kind of selfless behavior that we've done over the years has kind of fallen on deaf ears with Europe, and they're really, you know, kind of expected at this point as kind of a part of the recipe of American or global politics, as U.S. will step in if needed. And I don't think we have the interest anymore, both financially and out of economic interests and out of global security interests. I think we look at, you know, and you can see here, they're even talking about what percentage of our trade rolls through here. They're actually looking at this from a, you know, internal perspective and saying, hey, what's the give back for us if we do this? And I can tell you, there's, you know, working on a ship prior to this, I can tell you that we don't have a lot of American flag ships. We have a lot of foreign flag ships that move our goods, and that stuff's tracked pretty rigorously. And you know, there are divisions of our government who know, you know, they're very involved in the movement of goods to secure sort of the economics of this country, and it's crazy that national security consider that. All right, and this is, I would say, Tom, that this is probably the one slide that Pete dropped on us that may be a little sensitive, right? A little national security. So everything up to this point has been just discussion. I mean, is it stuff that you probably want to advertise in the press? Maybe not. But I think this is the one slide where you could make the case that maybe there's some, you know, information here that shouldn't be disclosed. Although it looks to me like this update was given about 30 minutes before the actual strike, so I don't think there was enough lead time for, you know, if this got released to really affect too much change. I mean, it's possible, right? But, you know, I'll read through this here. Team update. Time now 11:44 Eastern Standard Time. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM we are a go for the mission to launch. 12:15. So this seems to me like it might have been in retrospect. It's hard to tell because it's not time stamped, but 12:15 F-18 launch, first strike package. 13:45 trigger based F-18 first strike window starts. So they're saying basically we're going to launch at our strike craft at 12:15. It's going to take them about an hour and a half to get on target. The strike window starts at 13:45. A known location or should be on time. So they're not talking about locations. Also, strike drone launch. So they're bringing F-18s and they're bringing the Reapers, the MQ-9s, to maybe do a follow up, or maybe there's separate targets they're going to hit with the drones. But not really sure here. 14:10 more F-18s launched, second strike package. So they're running 2 strike packages. And then by 2:15, strike drones on target. So strike drones are considerably slower than the F-18s. They run off, I think, propeller or very small. Actually, no, the Reapers, I think they have the jet engine, the small jet engine. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen one in a while. But they're not as fast as F-18s. So their strike windows take longer. This is when, and they could be flying from land. They could be in Israel. They could be, you know, taking off from wherever and coming into this airspace from a separate location. Who knows? Strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will drop. Definitely drop, depending earlier trigger-based targets. So so I'll read the last part here. 1536, F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. So it looks like they're coordinating the Reapers to strike at the same time as the F-18s. F-18s are traveling for package. They get on target at 1345, ready to drop. 1410, so about 25 minutes later, or actually no, yeah, about 30 minutes later, strike drones get on target, and then they're all going to drop probably at the same time. And then they have a second package going after the fact. And then cruise-based Tomahawks. So interesting.
I mean, think of that firepower, man. You've got two sets of F-18s. You've got the Reaper drones going out there, and then you're going to launch Tomahawks from a cruise ship. And going back to your earlier comment, when I thought of the Houthis, I'm thinking of guys running around in pajamas that are just causing a little bit of chaos at the sea. Our overwhelming response here, I mean, wouldn't expect anything less. I think that the general public doesn't even. You think about what we did to destroy those Houthis. Was it all of that in your mind, or were you thinking like I think most people think that we shoot over one or two missiles and just call it a day and it's done? I mean, this is overwhelming firepower, and I can't even imagine what it was like to be, the Houthi terrorist that had to deal with that. I mean, what was that last moment like for them?
Yeah, and they go into talking about like one of their priority targets that got killed. One of the leaders over there. I can't imagine it's hard to find these guys. They're probably on secure cell phones. I imagine at this point, since the Houthis have been a problem for many, many years, they probably have deep intelligence, people tracking them. I mean, Israel's invested. They are excellent intel gathering. They are excellent. They have an excellent intel system over there. So I have to imagine it's very easy to find these guys. It's just a whether or not. I think historically, the U.S. hasn't really been interested in killing some of their top leaders. It's like, let bygones be bygones. Don't mess with us. We won't mess with you. And now this whole shipping thing has changed that paradigm. And this is a lot. It's a lot. And we don't know exactly how many bombs, how many, we're talking about after F-18s with the S launched. That could be 2, it could be 4, it could be 6. And then there's a second package F-18s. They can carry a ton of ordnance too. I mean, we're talking about glide bombs, Hellfire missiles, you name it. They got a lot of capability, and they definitely come off aircraft carriers, for sure, aircraft carriers. And then you have the destroyers and the cruisers that carry the Tomahawk cruise missiles, and they can launch them off the deck of a aircraft carrier too if they wanted to. So it's a lot of firepower. Let's see here what we got. And this is another one. So next page here, we got so he's setting, look at that's interesting there. He's saying Michael Waltz set disappearing message time to 4 weeks. So they're actually planning to delete all this stuff down the road. They're just letting it sit for a while. It's interesting. JD Vance comes in and says, I will say a prayer for victory. Fair enough. Michael Waltz.
Only two prayer hands going up there. I'm just kind of curious. Who were those two? I just wish we could click in there and see
who the guys were. Yeah, some people just aren't into emojis, bro. Like I think there's probably, there's a guy in here that drops some emojis in the chat. So I think some people are just into that jazz. So Michael Waltz says VP building collapsed, had multiple positive IDs. Pete, Gorilla, and IC amazing jobs. I don't know who those people are, but Pete Hegseth obviously, but the other two I'm not sure. But they're giving props. JD Vance didn't really recognize what was going on, and Michael Waltz responded. Was typing fast. The first target, their top missile guy, we had a positive idea of him walking to his girlfriend's building, and it's now collapsed. So however big that building was, it's no longer exists. So that's probably a glide bomb or some sort of guided ammunition they dropped on him. And then JD Vance is excellent. Muy excelente.
Yeah, I sitting there waiting for him to give like a Semper Fire or a kill. You only did 4 years in, so you figured that he'd give the
Or
the
maybe a
traditional.
little yacht, dude. A little yacht action in there. I think that'd be cool too. You know what I'm saying?
You know, like, how hilarious would that have been?
That'd have been good, dude. That'd have been good. That to me, like that's where you really get people is like have a little humor in here. You know what I mean? Like you just become more like you'll get more points from that than these chat messages getting released. At least with people like us.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
that's pretty hilarious. So okay, we got that here. Let's go in a little bit more here. And we got some circular congratulations. Mar, whoever this guy is good job, Pete, to your team. Michael Waltz, the team in MAL did a great job as well. I don't know what MAL is. No idea what that is. I'm sure I think about it long enough. I figured out. Great work, all. Powerful start. P. Hegg says CENTCOM is on point. Great job, all. People don't understand what CENTCOM is, so we divide our operational zones around the globe into these little sections, and we have operational commands that control and deconflict forces. And the Middle East is called CENTCOM, and that's where a lot of the U.S. spends, a lot of its energy and time these days. More strikes ongoing for hours tonight, and we'll provide full initial report tomorrow, but on time, on target, and good readouts so far. Susie Wiles, kudos to all. Wise.
Hey, she that's the chief of staff to POTUS, and she is an absolute savage, and not in a bad way, just like super, super organized. And yeah, she's a player. She's like the hidden player that is kind of like in the shadows there, keeping things on track. And she's an absolute badass. We should talk about her in depth one of these days.
So we probably know who one of the prayer hands is because we got Steve Witkoff out here dropping the emojis in the chat. He's got a little prayer muscle flag going on there, which I like. I think I dig it. That's like what we would do. Like, yeah, let's do a little flexy flex there. And then TG, great work, NFX. Cool beans. And I looked at most of these guys. Most of these guys are like they service members. So this is probably 75% veteran. So I'm actually surprised it's not more like, kind of uncouth.
Yeah. I'm surprised there's not, what do they call them? GIFs, the little videos played in the background. But Steve is definitely the emoji guy.
He's the emoji guy, dude. So we just got to identify who the other prayer was. I think that's the biggest controversy out of this chat is knowing who the other prayer guy is. And it could be Susie. Susie said, God bless. Could be, JD posted it. So, I mean, obviously he didn't do it, but I guess we'll never know, Tom. That's the big question mark out of this whole thing. So disappointing. So I think this is the last slide here. I don't think there's one more. I think that's it. So, this would be the end of the fun today.
Yeah, I mean, and look at what it is. I mean, so look, there's every single message out there for everyone in the audience that hasn't had the opportunity to see it. And I don't know if you're a military service member, if that bothers you. For me as a vet looking at this, nothing in there except getting to understand that the decision makers that planned this op and carried it out are pretty normal human beings that are looking at all sides of a problem instead of just making hasty, bottlenecked decisions. And so, not saying I'm happy that this thing leaked out, but for a leak, that's probably the best case scenario that you're going to get is an understanding that folks are trying to look at this from different perspectives, weighing the options, but really put in the country first, right? Like trying to still do things for other nations out there to improve everybody's lives. And so, look, there it is. That's the big mystery the big controversy that everybody talks about, but never takes the time to really break down. So, hopefully, for those that have tuned in here, you gained something out of this. My biggest takeaway, though, we do have some pretty amazing human beings, some veterans that are now in positions to, influence and, make changes. And I just got to say this one other thing, Matt, and we talked about this during the campaign, just through conversation, is like what I'm what I'm truly impressed by in this scenario is that these people, these players that happen to be vets in the past, they've made it through that transition time. They're reestablishing themselves, kind of in this new political arena. And they no longer just tout or wear that hat around of being a veteran. There's more to their life. They're onto what they feel are bigger and better things. And that to me is what I would hope that all service members would really take from this, especially if they find themselves in transition, is that you will eventually get to a place where you're making a difference and you're back on you're onto another mission, and you're no longer, your entire identity is sucked up in just being what it was that you were. But to know that they're involved in the situation and trying to shape things that affect, the population moving forward, affect Americans, affect others, that's huge. And for me, that's where I hope we all get at some point, is that we are beyond and professionally and personally grown, beyond our service, but still remember what it took and can advocate for those that are coming behind us. So that's just my take, but I'm just happy we were able to get back together again today, because I feel like we broke up when you had the Rona.
Yeah, I go back to that. Yeah, I was on death's door, man. That's the sickest I've been since I was a kid, I think. I mean, it was gnarly. I got it Rona a couple times, but it was always kind of like light Rona. It wasn't like the hard Rona. I got the hard Rona, man. That thing put me down pretty hard. And these days, physical health is being 47, you're worried about anything to take you out these days. So I was happy to be past that, but I'm excited too, Tom. I love these sessions, and I hope the people out there that watch these things get some value out of it. And I hope our analysis of this is enlighten people. I know a lot of people like me are very surface viewers of news. We catch the headline, we watch a couple of videos, and then we kind of make our decision on what that's all about. And sometimes you need a little bit more of a deeper dive talking about things. I think the biggest takeaway for me in this is how our leadership talks to each other, how they view the lens in which they view the world, how their views line up with what the president's priorities are, how they view national security threats, how they view Europe. All that in my mind is the takeaway here. Not necessarily that these things got out, but you get to peer behind the curtain a little bit and see how Trump's chosen people talk when he's not around, which is sort of in alignment with his philosophies. At least in my opinion, that's what I took away from this.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that wraps us for this week. And for those that are still with us at this point, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you leaving your comment on anything that you guys took away from this podcast, what you guys want to see. We've got some other content coming out in future episodes that we're happy and excited to share with you guys. So thanks for joining us on the Repurpose podcast. Looking forward to connecting with you guys next week. And hope you guys go out there and win this one.
We'll see you guys in the next one.